All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the ATA meeting for January 2026. My name is Alexander Fuller. We also have Rochelle Fajardo on the call today also. Just a couple of housekeeping things before we get started. Everyone is currently on mute. I do encourage people to ask questions throughout the presentation and utilize the questions function of GoToWebinar. So we'll try to answer things as we're going through the presentation. This webinar is going to be recorded. We will send out an email once it is available on the help desk to watch. We will also send the slides with that email. Okay, so on the agenda today, we're going to briefly kind of talk about the visibility rollout and next steps with that. Rochelle is going to kind of walk us through the HMIS access training. We're going to talk through the LSA follow-up, so some things that came out of the LSA submission this year. We're going to talk about the point of time count, the upcoming housing inventory count, and then a couple of upcoming dates of things to just keep on everyone's calendar. And we should have some time at the end to address any questions. So yeah, let's just get started. Okay, so for the visibility rollout, we have had, quite a bit of webinars and communications go out over the last couple of weeks, but this is just kind of a refresh of that. So again, global visibility in the system is going to launch February 3rd. We will send out an email February 2nd, just to let everybody know that to kind of be prepared for the next day. Again, the whole visibility rollout and the visibility plan is that data going forward for unlocked clients will now be globally shared throughout HMIS. So what that means is that new clients added to HMIS will have global visibility on enrollments, the client record themselves, case notes, service transactions, file attachments. But with that said, existing data in the system, so data that was entered February 2nd or prior, is going to have the existing or the visibility settings that it originally has. So whatever the visibility settings um, are for those clients currently, they're going to remain the same. There's not going to be any changes with that data. There are some exceptions to global visibility. So for Hopper and Rye projects, those projects will retain the same visibility that it currently has now. So clients that are created under those various projects would be locked by default, and then their data wouldn't be shared. So that is going to be like the only exception to global visibility. One thing that also is going to be updated is the new consent form. Uh, so the consent form isn't available on the help desk just yet, but it is going to be available starting January 29th, just so providers have an opportunity to download it and have it passed around and have it available so it can start being utilized February 3rd. We will include it in the emails that we send out on February 3rd and on February 2nd. But the consent article that we have on our help desk is going to be where that form is going to be able to be located. So once we send out the slides for the ATA meeting today, you will have all of these links, but then we'll also include them in various emails going forward. Okay, and just a couple of more things with the visibility rollout is that we do still have two more webinars to talk through visibility. The next webinar is actually scheduled for tomorrow at 12 p.m. It's going to be data accuracy and audit tools. So this webinar is really just going to go over available tools that providers have to review their data quality or review certain metrics within the data to make sure that providers don't have concerns, or if you do have concerns, you know where to look and what report to address those things in. The next webinar is going to be about reporting impacts. So with the visibility change and global visibility in the system, data is going to start flowing through reporting. So we're just going to talk about how that looks with various reports such as the APR, CAPER, VA reports, DFSS reports, things like that. So these are going to be the last two webinars in that series. Again, these webinars are recorded and they are going to be posted on our help desk article, our announcement help desk article. But again, the webinar links, so please register for those. One thing that we are going to offer is office hours to providers starting February 3rd. So that's going to be the day that visibility rolls out all the way to February 6th. So that entire week, we do have time slots available for providers to meet with the HMIS team to kind of talk through any concerns they might have related to their project, specifically in visibility, or just any specific questions related to their agency or how things are going to function. We can set time to talk through those. Um, so again, all of those or those 30-minute sessions have to be set up through the Outlook link here. Again, we would include this link in the follow-up email, but once we send out the slides, you will also just be able to go to the slides to register for one of those sessions. Okay, any questions about visibility before we move on? Okay, so I'm gonna pass it to Rochelle to talk through the new HMIS access.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. Happy Monday. If you have been receiving all the emails from me the past few weeks, today is the launch of the new HMIS access process. And I'm going to quickly go over kind of what that means for us today. Next slide, please. Alex, slide. Alex, can you switch slides, please? Thank you. So that means that today, if any users that are still training, so at the time of this meeting, if they have not received notification of passing the proctor or prior to today, so up until this point, if they have not received access to the HMIS, the live HMIS site, they have to submit a new request. The forms will go live later today. I will send a separate email out with all the links to the articles and new resources that I'll walk through again later today in these slides, but they're not live just yet, just because the training site will still need to be reset. So we are waiting for that to be done sometime this afternoon. That is why we're cutting it off. So a new request must be submitted for anybody that has not received access or anybody new that needs to be onboarded. So after they are processed, if they've been in the middle of training already, they will be enrolled in the new data management course. And the new HMIS General Access Training Final Steps Instruction course so that they know how to sign up for the waiting list. They will be provided a new HMIS account. Well, it's not new, but in the process of resetting the training site, licenses will be removed, so we will need to relicense training accounts. So that's another reason why a new request must be submitted. And then again, they won't be required to add themselves to the new sample client waitlist. Next slide, please. And then that new HMIS sample client waitlist, to be eligible, signing up and adding to it does not guarantee access to the assignment. So as a reminder, although it will be live later this afternoon, if you sign up for it, will be denied if you have not completed the requirements for it. So they must have completed the intro and the data management course within 6 months. If they already have access, this requirement will be waived. And then if the project specific course must have been completed within the last 3 months. Next slide, please. As a reminder, only ATAs will be able to submit these requests. So they must have completed both the ATA webinar and the HMIS access process. There are still a number of ATAs on our list here that have not completed the HMIS access process. We have sent several reminders that training is incomplete. So later after this meeting, we'll start the process of removing or downgrading some access for ATAs. And in order to reestablish that, the course will need to be completed. So if there are any providers that don't have any eligible ATAs to submit those requests, it will need to come from a director. Next slide, please. And then just a quick overview of what the process is. It will be that step one, a request must be submitted. So there are specific forms for specific types of users that you are requesting access for. And once those are processed, we will send over the course enrollments, training accounts, training credit updates, and all in one email. Or if there are missing information, we will send that. But we'd like to gather all the information at once in that first step. Step two is that self-paced LMS course. They will need to complete that introduction to HMIS as normal, the new data management course, a project-specific course, and then the general access training course. So that really just includes instructions on how to sign up for our step three. So that step three is previously called previously called the Proctor. It's just a sample client assignment now. It's very similar, but there's going to be a lot more additional resources and a wait list. So that is step three. And then, as before, once they have passed that assignment, they will receive their access. Here is a list of the articles that will be available for this new process. Again, I will be sending out a separate email, just kind of reminding everyone of these resources and the new process, and when the forms go live. So again, the forms are currently not live right now. The training site will need to be reset. So we can't make any new accounts until then. It also means that we're not reviewing any more submissions of proctors until that is complete, in order to not really confuse anybody, because we're not totally sure the exact time that the training site will be reset. So it'll be, we don't want to cut anybody off in the middle of training. So we are just stopping now at noon. I do see one question here. Is there going to be an updated training video uploaded for the new session? So the sample client assignment is still essentially the same, but yes, there will be a new updated training video later at the end of this week or early next week. It will be posted and available for users that are in the middle of the assignment itself when it becomes available. I see another question about courses not being added. Please just submit a ticket for any individual questions about your training. And I think that is the end of my slides.
Okay, thanks, Rochelle. Okay, so the next part is that I kind of want to talk through the LSA and kind of follow up with how the submission went this year. So just for context, the LSA stands for the Longitudinal System Analysis, and it's a required annual submission to HUD that uses HMIS data to understand how people move through the homeless response system over time. It looks at patterns such as entry and exits, length of stay, system performance across project types. Again, the LSA is all data coming from HMIS. There's no manual data submission pieces that's added to it. So it's complete HMIS data from a system level. It does reflect data quality and program operations. So it is looking specifically at particular project types and the requirements for those uh, project types. And then also data issues do impact how HUD understands our system and our outcomes. So that's kind of what I want to talk through with some of the data concerns that were highlighted this year. Okay, so when it comes to data concerns for the 2025 LSA, we did successfully submit to HUD on January 16th. As a result of that, again, there was a couple of things that did stand out. Some things were reoccurring from previous years. Um, One thing that has been kind of reoccurring, but again, we can still talk to is relationship to head of household. So this is a very important one in terms of understanding the data, is because this reflects the household members in families. So for single clients, there have been issues with the relationship of head of household where single clients, that field is actually blank. So things like that reflect negatively on the LSA. In situations like that, there shouldn't ever be a case where a relationship to head of household is missing for a single client, just because it's always going to be self. There's never a time where um, it should be anything else. In terms of other issues, it would be things such as households that don't have a head of household tied to it, or households with more than one head of household. So there's situations where you might have a two-parent family, and one parent is the head of household, where they'll be marked as self. And I've seen in cases where both adults are marked as self, but one has to be identified as the head of household, and the other one has to be identified as an additional household member or a spouse or any of the other options. But there can only be one head of household. And again, for single clients, if you're enrolling a single client, and this is a question you really don't even have to ask the client unless you're asking them, are there additional household members that are going to be enrolling with you? But if they say no, then that's an automatic answer to this question, which would be self. The next thing is going to be overlapping enrollments. This is one thing that we've really focused on over the last couple of years. One thing I do want to say, and thank everyone for participating in this, is that over the last 2 years, this has significantly decreased. 2 years ago, the overlapping enrollments throughout the system used to be kind of a major thing. Now it's not as significant as it used to be. There's still a lot of work to do, but I do want to take the opportunity to at least acknowledge how far we've come so far. So when it comes to overlapping enrollments right now, it's really pertaining to emergency shelters and transitional housing projects, which we see the most significant cases of overlapping enrollments. Again, there's numerous of reasons why these things happen. I think one of the main things that used to be a cause of this is visibility. So emergency shelter projects wasn't able to see other emergency shelter project enrollments. So a project might not know that the client went to another shelter and to exit them out. So with global visibility, that should help with that. But then also, again, just being mindful of exit dates, exiting your clients out appropriately, and ensuring that, yeah, you're just making sure you're exiting clients out when they actually leave your project. So number three here, when it comes to race and ethnicity, prior living situation, and destination, these are new flags for 2025. So this is the first year where HUD is actually flagging data concerns when it comes to these specific fields. So this year we did have quite a few of these warnings. Um, when it comes to these, what's being flagged is missing data. HUD defines missing data as null values and as the pick list options client prefers not to answer. So things like that are contributing to the lack of understanding in these specific situations. So like emergency shelters, not having a full understanding of where clients are going once they leave the shelter, reflects on how our data is understood the same way with prior living situation where they might have come prior to enrolling in your project, and then race and ethnicity being able to kind of get an understanding of what group of people is being affected the most in what specific projects or circumstances. So having full complete assessment data just helps HUD and the COC understand the data that's being entered into HMIS better. So these are things that we are going to try and focus on this year to try to integrate into, you know, email reminders that we send out right now during data quality periods. We are sending out overlapping enrollments to agencies that have overlaps. We're going to continue to do that this year. So we're going to try to incorporate all of this year to try to, help clean this up for next year. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is length of stay. Length of stay in the LSA is calculated using total bed nights divided by the number of people served. So for emergency shelter projects, HUD flags length of stay when the average exceeds 120 days. So when length of stay exceeds 120 exceed the 120-day threshold, it typically signals like a process issue rather than a program intent. So what that means is that when you have a high number of or your average is high in emergency shelters, it's signaling that clients aren't being exited appropriately. You know, something's not right with the data, rather than it might just be the intent of the project to keep clients on site as long as possible and provide them with services throughout. Um, but in cases where it's not a program intent, where it might just be a data inconsistencies. These are usually the cases. So clients lead a project, but the exit is recorded days or weeks after, or not at all. So artificially extending the average length of stay. So again, if there's no exit date, then of course the length of stay is going to continue to get higher. But one thing to kind of note with this is that um, when you do go in to add an exit date, let's say if you're adding an exit date after the fact, let's say it takes you a week to get to the data, which it shouldn't take you that long, but let's say it does take you quite a bit of days to actually put in an exit date. It should never be the date in which you're putting in the information into HMIS. So if a client left your project on the 5th and you don't get around to putting it into the 10th, you shouldn't put the 10th as the client's exit date, because those extended 5 days, the client wasn't on site, and that's adding to the length of stay, which is artificial. Some enrollments remain open for a long stretch of time because clients access the shelter intermittently rather than staying continuously. So again, if for pretty much all emergency shelter projects, since the all majority of projects in our continuum are defined as entry and exit emergency shelter projects, the enrollment reflects the client's staying on site. So any days that are counted between the entry date and the exit date, the expectation is that the client stayed on site every single one of those days. There's not a there's not a grace period to say like, oh, a client didn't come back for one day, then it's fine. It's every single day. So if they miss one day, you have to exit the client out. If they come back the next day, you have to enroll them back into your project. So if there's instances where you have clients enrolled in your project for, let's say, 2 years, and so let's say 2 years, right? So ideally, what you're saying is that your client stayed there every single day and never missed a day. If that's true, then that's perfectly fine. Please don't make any adjustments to the data. But if there are instances within, those huge gaps of time where the client actually didn't stay on site, they might have stayed with family and friends one night, they might have went to a different shelter a different night, then those are really data errors. So you really should break that enrollment up, which would break up your length of stay. Okay, and the last thing I kind of want to talk about when it comes to the LSA are the pick list values. I've mentioned this, I think, in a previous webinar related to visibility. But some data quality flags are driven specifically on pick list values that are used during data entry. So HUD does not interpret these selections as uncertainty or partial data. They are read as indicators of whether required questions were actually asked during intake. Sorry about that. As during intake or exit. So these two things are uh, data not collected and no exit interview completed. So when it comes to data not collected, this tells HUD that the question was not asked. This does not mean that the client refused, did not know, or so again, values, and you usually client uh, doesn't know. Specifically, data not collected is your agency telling HUD that you didn't ask the specific question to the client. In this year's LSA, this really had to do with the race and ethnicity and prior living situation. Because again, these two data elements now are included in the LSA, and they're looking for missing data. And HUD considers this data not collected value as missing data. So although you're selecting a valid HUD answer in the pick list, HUD still views that as if you left it blank. But more so, it's telling them that you didn't even ask the client the question. Similarly to no exit interview completed, so this is going to be found at the exit destination. So when you go to exit your client, you have to choose a destination. If you're choosing no exit interview completed, it's telling HUD that an exit interview did not occur at all. As a result, again, key outcome data is treated as missing. So the destination pick list is the same exact pick list for prior living situation. Same values. So for emergency shelter projects, if you know that your client is gonna go to a different shelter, then you want to exit them out as destination to emergency shelter or whatever is appropriate. Um, I do know that again, emergency shelters, there are some situations where again you don't really know where clients are going. I do still think that I would kind of work internally to kind of figure out a process to ensure that that data is collected. Similarly to how you collect the data to check them in, there should probably be a check out process where this could actually be the only question, unless your agency has specific things that they want captured. But just create an opportunity to capture destination. In other project types such as permanent supportive housing, again, if you have a client that has a housing moving date, you've housed that client in permanent supportive housing, then choosing no exit interview completed is kind of a conflict on their destination, because if you've housed this client in your permanent supportive housing project, then you should know the destination of the client, unless the client is no longer housed and they abandon their unit. In those cases, then you should go in and update the housing moving date to have a blank value before exiting your client out, just to indicate that your client is exiting uh not housed, homeless. Because leaving the housing moving date and then choosing no exit interview completed or a homeless situation or homeless destination, then that's a conflict with what you're reporting throughout the enrollment. So again, these two options in pick list should be reserved for kind of extreme cases where you just the data wasn't truly collected, and not kind of just as a default for to kind of get through assessment questions. Okay, I see quite a few questions here. So I'm gonna go through a couple really quick. So is there a report we can run that looks at overlapping enrollments and to correct them? Yes. So the report that you're gonna want to run to look at overlapping enrollments within your agency is gonna be the EVA report. You can run it for all of your projects, and then it'll show you overlapping enrollments between them. The report of overlapping enrollments between all projects. So we do send that out during the data quality period to all agencies, and it includes all of the overlaps with all the various agencies that your project might overlap with. And similarly, that the other agency are also going to receive the same report with you know, your overlaps as well. So in cases where you're reaching out to other providers to discuss an overlap during data quality, just know that they've received the same overlap on their report as well. Okay, how can emergency shelter capture exit data from clients who exit without notice? Yes, projects may not hold or force clients to stay if they're just exited without information. Okay, so the question is that clients have the option not to answer any questions and to kind of just leave at notice, especially in emergency shelters. So even if a process was kind of created at exit to collect that information, clients don't really have to complete it. And that's completely true. So clients do have the option not to provide any information and to leave at will. But I say kind of put a process in place to capture that information is because right now, if you're not capturing 100% of it and you put this process in place, then maybe you could capture 30% of the clients where they're willing to tell you their destination. Just even that improvement increases, the usability of destinations for emergency shelter projects. So again, it's not going to be 100%. Of course, clients have the option to just leave, not provide any information. But if this is something that you're not even trying to capture for 99%, 100% of your clients, then I just say that this would be something to kind of implement to at least try to capture information on the clients that want to share it. Okay, what does it mean that they need to go through enrollment process called 311? Okay, I'm not 100% sure of this question. Okay, Troy, if you can just provide a little bit more context on your question, I can come right back to it. So for our facility, they are allowed weekend passes. They may be off-site 3 days. Are they supposed to be disenrolled and then re-enrolled? So yes, if you're referring to an emergency shelter project, although your agency might, allow a 3-day pass for people to be off site, that's not how HUD defines emergency shelter projects and how they should operate. So ideally you should be exiting clients out when they're not staying at your facility, because what's happening right now is that internally, clients aren't at your site for those 3-day passes or the weekend passes. but in the system it doesn't reflect that. So if you account for for 2 days, so what's that, 8 days a month for a year that a client might not be at a facility, that's a lot of days. So it shouldn't be one. But again, if a client's not at your facility, you're going to want to exit them out. There shouldn't be a day where you're accounting for a client that's not checked into a bed at your facility. Okay. I'll stay on after this to answer all the questions, but let me just go through a couple of more slides. Keep asking questions. They're really good questions. Okay, so for the point in time count this year, it was held last Thursday, January 22nd. Again, the project types that were required to participate are emergency shelter projects, entry and exit and night by night, transitional housing, and safe haven projects. We do have a help desk article with a list of all of the 2026 point in time count projects. So providers still have an opportunity to update their data and ensure that it's accurate for the point in time date. So we do have a business objects report that will pull information for that date. And we strongly encourage you to kind of review the clients that are pulling into that report. 2025, where the Okay, so the next thing is going to be the housing inventory count. So this process is set to begin on February 9th and it's going to go through February 20th. This year, the housing inventory count process is starting a few weeks later than it typically does. But the process is still going to be exactly the same as last year. There's not going to be anything additional. The assessment might actually have a few questions removed, so it might be a tad bit quicker to actually get through it. But the process is going to be similar to how it's always been. We do have a webinar planned for February 9th at 12 p.m. We are going to send out this link via email and add more information about the HIC. But in the interim, if you want to register ahead of time, the link is available in the slide here. But again, we're going to send this out within the next couple of days. So project types that are required for the housing inventory count is going to be emergency shelter projects, entry and exit night by night, transitional housing, safe haven, permanent supportive housing, wrap housing, permanent housing, which is housing with services, no disability required, and then permanent housing, housing only. So these project types are going to be required to complete a HIC survey. Similar to last year, it's going to be an Alchemer survey. You're going to do one for each project. The login is going to be based on the project ID number. But again, we'll talk through all of the details during the webinar, but the process is going to be fairly identical to previous years. Okay, so the next thing is going to be upcoming dates. So today is our first ATA meeting of the year. We have 5 more throughout the year. So March, May, July, September, and November. We already have those dates set for the date that we anticipate having the webinar. We do have the links available now, so you can pre-register for them, so they can, be in your calendar ahead of time and kind of be a reminder. There are chances that some of these dates might change in the future, just because we're planning them so far out. We're not 100% sure um, if they'll all land on the exact date. The links will always remain the same for registration, but if the dates do change for whatever reason, we will send out an email, and then GoToWebinar will send out an email also letting you know the updated date. And again, all of these are always going to be recorded, so if you do happen to miss one, it is going to be available on the help desk. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is data quality. So data quality Q4 is set to go from February 23rd to March 6th. We do have a webinar that will happen on February 23rd at 12 p.m. We will send out a link for that a little bit closer to the data quality period kicking off. This is going to be for Q4 data, so it's going to cover between October 1st of 2025 through December 31st of 2025. And one thing to highlight that's kind of really important about this particular data quality period is that this is going to be the first one where the sex value is actually going to show errors if they're missing for clients that should have it. So in the previous iteration of data quality was looking at Q3. The new sex field didn't really go into effect until October 1st. So any clients captured in the Q3 report, uh, it might have shown in the details clients that were missing it, but going forward, it is going to show as errors if they're missing the sex value. And again, it's only for clients that enrolled in the project on or after October 1st of 2025. Sorry, that's a typo at the bottom, 2026, but it's October 1st of 2025. And similar to every year, we are going to have office hour, or every data quality period is that we are going to have office hours starting on February 16th through the 27th, and we will provide a link to that also so you can register for those time slots. Okay, so that's all of the slides that we have for today. I am going to go through all of the questions and reply back to everyone. But again, if you don't want to stay for the questions, thank you everybody for joining. We will send this the slide deck out, and the recording will be posted on the help desk. But again, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you again for joining. But I will stay on for quite a bit to answer any remaining questions.
I also wanted to hop back on and answer some questions received live too, real quick, about the new HMIS access process. Um, so there's a question about folks starting over. So what's going to happen if they've already been in the middle of training is that they're not necessarily having to start over, but it kind of depends on when they started training. So part of this new process is that we're trying to limit folks that have started training over a year ago. So like trying to make sure that you've done training recently. If they started training recently and they just haven't passed the sample client, but then they will still need to do the new data management course and the final instruction course, along with add themselves to the waitlist. So they will have to start over their proctor and add themselves to the waitlist for that. There was another question about. I'll pause for that. While I look for the other question and let Alex answer some other questions.
Okay, so we have one question here. If a client violates curfew and arrives after 11 p.m. or midnight and arrives on the next day morning, let's say 7 a.m., does that require an exit or entry? Also, how does that account for clients who work overnight and have a curfew explanation internally for work and related needs? So that's a pretty good question. So ideally, again, the way that you should view this is that you're accounting for the client being at your facility for the night. In these situations where a client might have that might work overnight but might, check into the shelter earlier, and then maybe come back before everyone checks out. But there is some time that they're not there during the night, then that's fine because you're accounting for that bed that they would have at your facility. So that's really what it is. So if a client comes late or checks in late, they should still be counted if they're going to occupy a bed. The thing is that let's say you have 50 beds and you have 50 clients enrolled in those beds, then you shouldn't have 52 clients enrolled in your project because now you're saying that you only have 50 beds, but you have 52 clients enrolled. So that just means that either some clients shouldn't be enrolled or some clients don't have a bid, and that's kind of the conflict. So when it comes to just ensuring that you're capturing clients that are truly at your facility, is more to say clients that are occupying a bed. So if they come late or if they're only occupying that bed for an hour, but you're not gonna give that bed to another client, then then they should be counted. It's gonna be clients that are not at your facility that you're not counting a bed for. So a client that doesn't show up, so you give their bed to another client that night. The client that didn't show up should be exited out of your project until they show back up.
Hopping back on, there is a question here about if they submitted a proctor today. So we've sent out a reminder on Friday that we will not be reviewing any new proctors for today. Um, I reviewed a couple that I received before today, but today was the cutoff. So if their proctor was not reviewed today, if they didn't pass by today, um, they will need to re-register and they will need to complete the courses, add themselves to the wait list. The data management course is going to be for all users still in training. So if they will be doing training starting today and onward, they will be required to do that. If they will be doing additional training in the future, they will need to go back and do that. But if your user are existing, they've already in the system, they have passed the for today, they don't need anything else, then they will not need to complete that course until they do need to do new training. And pass it back to Al.
Okay. So we have a question here. We have a permanent supportive housing. If we have a client or probably enrolled in permanent supportive housing that has a housing movement date, and they leave 10 or 14 months later, but do not tell us where they're going, are you saying we should then remove their housing movement date? No. So that's not what I'm saying. You shouldn't remove a housing movement date from a client until you confirm that they're no longer staying at the housing in which you put the housing movement date for. So if you housed a client, which caused you to put in a housing movement date into HMIS, only reason you should remove that is if you get word that the lease is no longer um, valid because the client left or something like that, where the client is no longer staying at that place that you put them, then you should remove the housing movement date. Um, in situations, let's say it's 14 months and you haven't spoken to the client, that might just be a unique situation. But ideally, clients that are housed in your project, you should know, I would think you should know where they are, right? And if you lose contact with them, but then you still, know that they have a valid lease for a year, then I would still exit them as housed, because as far as you know, you've housed them. Um, only way I will remove that housing movement date is if it conflicts with what I know about the client's living situation or information that's been provided about the client's living situation. But other than that, you should be going based on what you're getting from the client. And I would just be concerned if you haven't spoken to the client in 14 months. All right, let's jump to another question. Okay, what
Um,
if,
oh,
I'm
sorry.
sorry.
Um, so just hopping back on about the proctors. So since the process is changing today, I am seeing some questions about the current process and receiving the feedback through the help desk. I really would disregard kind of the help desk process as of today. Um, the new feedback has a form. It's a little bit more clear. We understand that the way that I've been providing feedback about the proctor can be lengthy and confusing. So there is a new process. Um, so I it is unfortunate some people have to get cut off in the middle of their training, but this is kind of the best way we can go about it. We've gone through a period of transition to get people through as fast as we can. So they will not have to go through and just re-register in, through the new process. There was also another question about ATAs getting accounts in the training site to get a better view of proctors. So I'm not sure what that means because you shouldn't need additional accounts or additional. Oh, okay. So now that I'm thinking of that, if you do need a training account in the training site and you don't have one, please just reach out to the help desk and let us know what you need. But you should be able to see the sample clients that your users are creating since it is being created under your agency. That's what I thought you were asking.
All right, so we have another question. What if a client exits the program before staff has a chance to leave? What would the appropriate answer be? No, and can it be, if we can't answer, no exit interview completed? So I really want to be very specific about this, is that when it comes to the no exit interview completed, I'm really referring to situations where the information could have been gathered. If there are situations where clients just disappear or just refuse to provide information and no exit interview is accurate for that particular situation, then you should definitely pick it. I'm not saying that you should pick something that's inaccurate for the true situation of the client. I'm just saying that the amount of no exit interviews completed for emergency shelter is significantly high compared to any other destination. So within that, I just think that there is some room for some of that data to have been collected. So if there are instances at your agency where you can collect that data, or if you've not prioritized collecting that data, then this is kind of me just asking that you look into starting to collect that for clients. But again, if no exit interview is accurate to the client, if the client just left and you really don't know what happened, then definitely choose no exit interview completed, because that's the accurate situation. Okay, I have another follow-up question about the move-in dates. For some of our rapid housing projects, the client subsidy will end at the same time as their lease ends. If we were unable to complete an exit interview with them, but they were housed the entire time of their enrollment, what should we do here? The client's subsidy will end at the same time as their lease ends. So so when it comes to housing moving dates, I mean, this particular question just depends on when they're exiting the project. So if they're exiting at the time of their lease ending, so if you're exiting them like the day that their lease ends, I would. So it just depends on the exact date. Like if it's on the exact date and you're exiting them out, then I'm not 100% sure how you would go about that. I think it might depend on just your interactions with the client. So if the client is going to be taking on the lease on their own, then that kind of determines the if anything should change. If the client is seeking additional assistance, or if the client is going to do something differently, then you might want to adjust something. If the client subsidy ends and their lease ends and they leave the unit prior to you exiting them out, then you should definitely exit them as without a housing moving day, because they're no longer housed at the time of exit. But again, a lot of this just really depends on your communication with the client and their documentation. In this particular situation, I think it might be a bit unique. Um, no, it's a good question. Okay, so we have one more, I believe. For the PIT, we have a program that when we run the shelter point and point in time report was blank, but our other programs report showed. Um, there could be a couple of different reasons why the report might have showed blank. Uh, Sometimes if you're putting in a provider that you're running the project for and you accidentally put something in for EDA provider, then that might cause data to show inaccurately or not show up at all. Um, the effective date sometimes makes a difference. So let's say it's a new project that just got started at the beginning of the year, and you change the effective date to uh, December 2025. Since there was no data entered into the system at that time, your report's going to show blank. There's a couple of different things. So if you haven't already, just submit a ticket to the help desk and we can look into it for you. Okay, so another question, will there be a new ROI report in Business Objects so we can see if staff enrolled clients without entering an ROI first? So we are looking into that, putting together a release of information report for Business Objects for providers to run. Hopefully it's available the first week of visibility rolling out. But if not, then it will be coming shortly if that is something that we're able to put together. But if not, we'll definitely uh, make note of that. Okay, I believe those are all of the questions. I do again want to thank everybody for joining the webinar today. These slides and the recording is going to be available on the help desk. We will send this out. Ideally, an email will go out tomorrow with the slides and the recording. But again, thank you everyone for joining. If you have any additional questions, always feel free to reach out to the help desk, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.